A broke rancher on the Arizona border has 90 days to save his land, but one wounded mother is about to give him a more impossible deadline. This is The Marksman, where a man who thinks his life is already over becomes the last thing standing between a child and the cartel. The movie opens on Jim Hansen, an aging rancher and former Marine, riding his dusty property with his dog Jackson. His land sits close to the border, so when he spots migrants crossing through the hills, he calls Border Patrol like it is just another part of the job. Then he finds one man collapsed and left behind, and even Jim's hard shell cracks a little. But Jim's own world is falling apart. A bank officer drives out to the ranch and hands him a foreclosure notice. Jim is behind on payments. The bank can auction the place, and the hill where he scattered his wife's ashes is now just another piece of property on a balance sheet. He tries to find work, but every conversation ends the same way. Sympathy, excuses, and no real help. His wife Christine's medical bills emptied him out. His cattle are worth less than he needs. Jim is proud, tired, and angry, and he is slowly realizing that service, taxes, and hard work did not protect him from losing everything. That night, his stepdaughter Sarah, a Border Patrol agent, finds him drinking and spiraling. She brings him home, and the grief between them is obvious. Christine was Sarah's mother, Jim's wife, and the person who held both of them together. Without her, Jim is just surviving day to day. The next morning, the border brings the danger right to Jim's fence. A woman named Rosa and her young son Miguel stumble onto his land, desperate, exhausted, and terrified. Jim offers to call Border Patrol, thinking that is the safest option. Rosa begs him not to, even offering money, but Jim insists he is not a smuggler. Before help arrives, armed men appear from the Mexican side. Their leader, Mauricio, says he has come for the woman and the boy. Jim understands immediately that these are not ordinary criminals. He stands his ground with a rifle, relying on old Marine instincts and the hope that law enforcement is on the way. The standoff explodes into gunfire. Jim fights back, kills Mauricio's brother, and gets Rosa and Miguel into his truck, but Rosa is badly wounded. As the cartel men retreat, Rosa uses her last strength to plead with Jim. She gives him an address for family in Chicago and asks him to take Miguel there. When the authorities arrive, Jim is shaken, Miguel is furious, and Sarah tries to make sense of what happened. The boy says, in his grief, that if Jim had not interfered, his mother might still be alive. Jim knows the kid is just hurting, but the words land hard. Jim goes home, but Rosa's request will not leave him alone. The money, the address, the boy's terrified face, all of it keeps circling in his head. Then he learns Miguel is not being safely placed in foster care. He is being deported, supposedly to relatives across the border. Jim understands what that really means. Mauricio will be waiting. So Jim makes a choice that turns him from witness into fugitive. He slips into the holding area, gets Miguel out, and drives away with Jackson in the truck. Miguel does not trust him, and Jim barely knows how to explain himself, but he has decided to do what Rosa asked, get the boy to his family in Chicago. At first, the road trip is all friction. Jim has no modern phone, no patience, and no talent for comforting children. Miguel wants to go home, blaming Jim for calling Border Patrol in the first place. Jim fires back that he was trying to keep them alive. Neither of them is really listening yet. Sarah calls, furious and scared. Jim tells her the cartel was waiting for Miguel, but she says he should have come to her instead of taking the boy. Then she drops worse news. Jim's ranch has been burned to the ground. Mauricio has already struck back, and Jim's old life is gone in flames. The chase tightens almost immediately. At a gas station, Mauricio questions a clerk and forces her to reveal Jim's direction. Meanwhile, Jim's truck is damaged from the border shootout, and a mechanic finds a bullet lodged near the radiator. The repair can only be temporary, which means Jim and Miguel are moving on borrowed time. In a diner, the two finally start talking like people instead of enemies. Miguel reveals that his uncle crossed the cartel by stealing from them, and Rosa fled because the family was marked. Jim learns Miguel's father is dead, and for the first time, the boy has a name in Jim's mind instead of being just a responsibility. There's small moments of warmth. Miguel tries to handle shopping and gets caught with snacks he cannot pay for. Jim grumbles, but the situation almost makes him smile. The boy studies an old atlas while Jim tries to navigate without a phone, and their uneasy partnership begins to feel a little less impossible. Then a highway patrol stop goes wrong. The officer says he wants to speak with Miguel, but Jim notices he never actually does. The man is not acting like a cop doing his job. He is acting like someone waiting for instructions. Jim realizes the cartel has bought its way into their path. Jim challenges him, asking how much a badge is worth when it is sold out. The stop turns into another fight. Jim and Miguel escape, but the encounter confirms the worst. Mauricio's reach is not limited to Mexico, and every road, town, and uniform could become a trap. Knowing he is outgunned, Jim tries to buy weapons from another veteran. The shop owner senses the desperation, but also hears the truth in Jim's voice. Jim explains that someone is hunting him and the boy, and that the police may not be able to protect them. He made a choice, and now he has to live with it. Sarah calls again with a full picture. Mauricio is a lifelong cartel soldier, and the man Jim killed was his brother. Miguel's uncle has already been found dead, which means no debt is being forgiven. Sarah warns Jim that Mauricio will keep coming until both he and Miguel are dead. For a moment, Jim agrees to bring Miguel in. He is exhausted, outmatched, and scared that his stubborn rescue will get the boy killed. But instead of trusting local authorities, he decides to hide in a motel until Sarah can reach them herself. That night, Miguel and Jim share the closest thing to a normal evening they have had. Miguel asks about Jim's wife, and Jim admits that losing Christine left him alone in a way people do not simply get used to. Miguel talks about a girl back home and about wanting a Chicago hot dog. For the first time, the future sounds real. But Mauricio finds him again. Jackson senses danger, and Jim wakes Miguel just in time. Jim calls in a fake emergency to draw police toward the motel, then tries to escape through the chaos. Mauricio taunts him as the old Marine, turning Jim's past into a threat. Jim gets Miguel moving, but he goes back for Jackson. The escape costs him dearly. Jackson is killed, and Jim buries his loyal dog beside the road. His grief turns sharp and bitter. He snaps at Miguel, even saying he should never have started this trip, because now the last companion from his old life is gone too. Miguel runs off, hurt and angry, but Jim finds him. The boy reveals he discovered the cartel money in Rosa's bag, and Jim admits he should have told him. They are both grieving now, both scared, and both carrying guilt they cannot fix. At a church, Jim asks the priest to pray for Rosa so Miguel can have some kind of goodbye. The moment is quiet but important. Miguel hears his mother's name treated with dignity, and Jim hears the priest say that Rosa must have had great faith in him to trust him with her child. That lands deeper than any lecture. Jim calls Sarah and tells her the truth. Miguel is not going back. Sarah argues that there are legal options, but Jim asks the one question she cannot promise away. What kind of chance does Miguel really have if he is returned to the system and the cartel is waiting? Jim tells Sarah he feels as if Christine is guiding him, pushing him to help this boy because Miguel did nothing to deserve the life chasing him. Sarah knows she cannot protect Jim if he continues, but she gives him what time she can. When asked where Jim is headed, she chooses not to betray him. Now Jim commits fully. He buys another map, takes side roads, and starts teaching Miguel survival skills. During target practice, Miguel says one day he wants revenge. Jim shuts that down. He tells him there is nothing glorious about taking a life, and that Rosa died to give him a better future, not a blood debt. That night by the fire, the bond between them finally becomes honest. Miguel asks if Jim still misses his wife, and Jim says he misses her every day. He tells Miguel there are still good days ahead, and for once Jim says something hopeful like he actually wants to believe it. Miguel rejects the cartel money, so Jim burns it. It is a symbolic choice, but also a dangerous one. The money could save Jim's ranch, pay his debts, and buy comfort. Instead, he destroys the thing that caused so much death, choosing the boy's clean start over his own rescue. Mauricio still tracks them down. A cartel contact identifies their route, and soon Jim spots the threat closing in. The chase turns violent, forcing Jim and Miguel off the road and into open country. Miguel wants to run, but Jim knows running will only delay the inevitable. This time, he decides to make a stand. In the hills, Jim uses everything he has left: patience, terrain, and the discipline of an old marksman. He sends Miguel to cover, tells him what to do if he dies, and then uses the boy to create a distraction. It is not about turning Miguel into a killer. It is about giving them one chance to survive. The fight narrows until Jim and Mauricio face each other. Mauricio grabs Miguel and tries to poison the boy with the same logic that shaped him. The world gives no choices, so violence is survival. He says Miguel will become a soldier. Jim refuses to let that be the ending Rosa died to prevent. Miguel ends up with the power to shoot, but Jim pleads with him not to cross that line. He tells the boy to walk away. Miguel chooses not to become Mauricio, and that choice matters more than winning the fight. Jim then confronts Mauricio with a bitter mercy, making him understand that choice was always the thing he tried to steal from others. Jim is wounded, but he keeps his promise. He gets Miguel to Chicago, where the boy's relatives are waiting. Before they part, Jim gives Miguel what remains for his future and watches the child finally run into the arms of family instead of danger. After everything, Jim boards a bus alone. The ranch is gone, Jackson is gone, and his body is failing, but he has done the one thing he could still do right. He gave Miguel a chance to live without becoming the men who hunted him. And that is why the marksman is less about a perfect hero than a broken man choosing one final purpose. Jim could not save his land, his wife, or even his old life, but he could keep a promise on a dying woman's breath. If this road trip hit you harder than expected, leave a mark for Jim and Miguel before you move on. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.